all have a chance. Grace, truth, and time. I gave you a little truth. Hopefully you feel a little supported. We got a moment here. Do you have any issues? Do you? You do? What do we say? Welcome. This is repentance. See? It works. How many of you said to that person next to you, you got issues? Raise your hand if you said that. Okay? Let me show you how this works. Turn the finger to yourself now. I got some issues. Turn to that person and say, I got some issues. And I don't feel bad about it because you love me. Thank the person with you for accepting you just like you are. All right. Now let's get into what I would like to do in this section. Is I'm going to begin a little trip here, and I'm going to talk about 4 critical issues that cause most of our symptoms, most of our struggles, depression, anxiety, stress, addiction, all this. Now, I'm not going to go into the biology of it and the predispositions and all that. That's a different topic. But I'm going to talk about the stuff that we have control over. Okay? The stuff that God tells us to do in this process. All right, so remember I said earlier that basically you are designed to drive down the road like a Maserati, and you're supposed to hit a speed bump and just fly over it, okay? Now what happens is, if our shock absorbers are broken, we hit that speed bump, and it can pull us off the road. How many of you have experienced some speed bumps in your life, and they got you depressed? What was his name? You don't say. Or a certain boss or certain loss or whatever it is. And, there's a lot of words for this. The precipitating crisis is one you hear. Somebody comes in depression. You want to know what's happened in the last year or so that might have triggered not just that loss causing the depression, but that loss, you've heard the phrase, tapped into other things that they've gone through. And the way the brain is constructed is it's not like a filing system, it's like a network. And you push this button over here, and it starts to trigger stuff. Okay? And then we feel the effects of whatever is unresolved. The extreme form of that is PTSD, where somebody just has a trigger and they re-experience being in the war or the abuse. But see, all of us have post-traumatic stress disorder in that each of us will go through life and will encounter something that taxes the system. And we have a choice every time we have a struggle. We have a choice. We can medicate that in a bad way. I believe in good medicine. But we can medicate it in a bad way. You can act out in some way to relieve the pain. Okay? Or we can strike back to give us a sense of power in the moment, to get us out of our powerless feeling of being victimized. Or we can go in denial and detached and become kind of a robot where we don't feel anything. But we all have these things. Now, if you go to James chapter 1 is a great example of this. It says, and this is what the Greek actually says. I'll let you in on the inner secret here. It says, when you're depressed out of your mind, consider it all joy. When your husband is a control freak, consider it all joy. I can keep going. Literally, it reads, when you have various trials, consider it all joy, because if you work through the issues, it says, if you persevere, get this, it says, then the result of working through that instead of around it or avoiding it, the result of working through that will be that you become mature or complete, lacking in nothing. many times we go through things and that triggers something, and that's an invitation to say, why is this bothering me so much? I need to find out, what do I need to become complete in? What needs healing inside of me? And I'm going to go into 4 of these areas. And it has to do with how you were designed to function. You were designed to fly. You were designed to soar. There were no recovery groups in Genesis 1 or 2. They just lived without judgment, and they went out there and they did it. They reached their goals, and I'm sure they fell out of the tree and had to learn. But they didn't get pushed out of the tree. But since then, we've had to be in this process. First of the 4, your job description is you must learn how to connect, to bond. Sorry, oh, you guys can see it over there. Connected bond, which means you've got to trust. You've got to be vulnerable. You've got to open up. And you have to, are you ready? We got any macho men in here? You know, that's a trick question. Because you know I'm going to slam you, macho men. But then how many of you are going to raise your hand? I'm not macho. See, I thought that was funny. It's like you're not going to admit to being a wuss, but you know the wuss is going to get judged. So or the macho is going to get judged. So we do. It's like I got stopped by a cop one time, psychologist that I am. I said, you probably don't have the authority to let me off with a warning, do you? It's what we call a double bind, you know. But your first job description, how many of you ladies had babies? All right? How many of your babies turned at that first moment and looked up to you and said, gosh, Mom, was that tough on you? I'm so sorry. Let me clean up around here. You go get a massage. I'll you know. They didn't do that. Now, hopefully, by the time they're 6 or 8, they're coming in the kitchen and helping out. But they didn't do that first time. But they have a job. And their job is to connect with you and to form an attachment. Because here's what happens. You can take a baby and feed and water it. And if that's all you do, and it's not bonded with, it's not loved, it's not connected with, even the physiology begins to die. See, we are a mind, body, spirit incarnation of the spiritual life. And a baby that is fed and watered, but not connected with, grows up with something called failure to thrive. Their brain sizes are smaller. Their body weight is less. Their immune system is worse. I mean, there are a host of things that connection provides for the infant to download. Are you ready for this? You take an institutionalized infant, you adopt them 10 years later. I'm not saying don't adopt, but what I'm going to say is, so a lot of them, we've seen this over and over and over, will start to manifest behavior problems. Okay, you take a brain scan of that 10-year-old, and there are dark spots in the brain where the circuitry did not get laid down, and they were fed and watered, but they weren't loved. You take an 85-year-old who has a heart attack or stroke, and you put them in a group that supports them, and they process the difficulties in going through that illness. They have incredibly lower rates of second heart attack and stroke compared to the other group that has all the best medical attention in the world and no support system. They have second, third, fourth. And on and on and on and on. God has designed us. We are not self-sustaining entities. We must draw life from outside of ourselves. But see, it's trust and opening up and becoming vulnerable and connecting that fuels this human organism. An addict that's trying to recover on their own goes to a recovery group, and what's the first thing they do? They open up and they become vulnerable. And they receive. How many of you have a hard time receiving? You're human. Unless you're lazy, you have a hard time receiving. If we're lazy, that's all we want to do is receive. We don't ever want to get back. We just want, more. 35 and my skinny jeans living on the couch playing video games, that's not good. Have received enough. Time for some output. But in the first year, your job description is to open up and receive the love that's going to lay the foundation for the wiring in your neurobiology, in your physiology, in your psychology, in your spirituality. Are you ready for this? David said, God, you taught me to trust you at Sunday school. No, that's not what the verse says. Hebrew school. No. Here's what he says. God, you taught me to trust you at my mother's breast. There it is, right there in the scriptures. Everything we know about people, when that trust muscle gets broken, the power switch has gone off. As I read the Bible, and I'm open to correction on this, Pastor, you can help me. I only know of one time in the Bible where God is afraid. Remember that? He said, these people are so unified and they all speak the same language. They can do anything that they want because of their unity. I'm going to scatter them because they're unifying, going down the wrong path to salvation. But boy, does that unity work. And then what does he do? He keeps them from being unified, becoming a gang or something. The gray gangs are unified. But he prevents the power of that unity, and what he does is in John 17, he prays for that very thing. For his group, he didn't pray for the finances, the plan, didn't pray for, Sunday school teachers. These are 12 idiots that have to go change the planet. He prays for one thing. He prays, Father, I pray that they might become one. That they might love one another just as we have, that unity that we have. Our first job description as humans is to learn to trust, and it doesn't stop at infancy. It goes through and increasing that skill. I was reading in Thessalonians just last night. Paul says, you have loved one another. You're doing all this great love. He said, but I pray that you do more and you love each other more deeply. And there is no recovery, no healing, no anything if we're not plugged into the power of God directly, and the power of God, as he said, it's better that I go away because I can only, this is in the Greek, I guess, I can only go to one small group at a time. He says, better that I go away because I'm going to send the comforter. And that comforter is going to be in every small group, in every chair. And where two of you sit down at Starbucks, or Camel Coffee Shop, whatever they had back then. That was a joke. Wherever two of you sit down, there I am also. 1 Peter 4 says, when you speak to one another, get this, when you speak to one another, when you say, I'm so sorry you went through that, or how can I help you, or, I think that needs to change, or you can do better than that. Here's what it says, that you are speaking. Speak, it says, as if you are speaking the very words of God. You hear the phrase, Jesus with skin on. That's not just a phrase. So we got to have the right words inside of us, because you are Jesus to that person. And the power is going to come from this unity. And I turned to, think of 2 Corinthians 6. Paul says, Corinthians, we've given our lives to you. And he goes on, he talks about it. He says, we have opened up our life. And then he says, I speak as to children, open wide your hearts to us as well. If we're in anything spiritual that doesn't involve vulnerability, it ain't spiritual. It's pharisaical. All spiritual growth has the foundation of dependency. God is the only self-sustaining entity. So we start out here. So what I want to ask you, and you may be good at this. Some of you, this went well. Some of you, it didn't go well. And some of you, it went well until it didn't. You're a connecting person. You were born and you were so vulnerable and you loved and you went out and you loved everybody. But you happened to love that uncle so much that you trusted that uncle, and that uncle molested you, or that boyfriend later on, or that cousin, or that parent that you looked for in your bonding and you ran to and you needed so bad, but they were abusive and you had trauma bonding, which is the need for bonding is so strong that we will even sometimes more severely or significantly bond with someone who hurts us because they intermittently offer relief. It's one of the strongest attachments. It's the most difficult to break. When somebody's had a pattern of abuse and love coming from the same person. And what I want for you is I want a safe place where you can go. And you can say, I need help. I want a person that you can call and say, I'm struggling. I want a group that over and over as the seasons go forth, that's where you take your needs. And I'm going to give you the one clear test for this. It is called transformational moments. What's a transformational moment? It's when we are in one state, I'm confused. We open up and we connect with somebody that has something to offer us. And after that interaction, we walk away in a different state. We're no longer confused. We have clarity. It's when we feel hopeless and we go to our small group, we get a little encouragement, and when we leave and get in the car, we don't have all the answers, but we don't feel hopeless anymore. That's a transformational experience. When we don't have courage, and somebody, you ever wonder why the Bible says encourage one another? Encourage. Put courage into someone. And we don't have it. And our buddy comes along and says, come on, we can do this. And we leave that moment, and now we've got the courage to do it. See, it was transmuted. And that experience transformed us from one state to another, and 10,000s of these. See, the opposite of being connected is being emotionally isolated. Emotionally isolated does not mean I am away from humans. Some people are emotionally isolated in a marriage where there is a human there. The loneliest place in life is to be in a relationship that's supposed to be close, and I'm alone. As George Thorogood said in his old rock and roll song, when I drink alone, I prefer to be by myself. What a great line. Because when we're somebody, we're supposed to feel a connection. But come on, it's like the old country and western song on the other side. How can I miss you if you never go away? See, we're designed also for solitude, but solitude is not isolation. Solitude is where we have the capacity to work independently and be alone because we have so much love inside of us. Because it's internalized. So I want you to look at, how's your trust muscle working, and are you placing yourself into some sort of setting where you begin to work on the skills, and the materials in the workbook will take you through the skills of opening up and revealing what hurts and investing and getting all of this stuff and getting over the maps in your head. Well, you know you can't trust people. Well, you better go to another planet because that's the best we got. And God says we have to. Now I know somebody's singing the verse, my trust is not in man, it's in trust God. Of course. But here's what Paul said. He said, I was depressed. He trusted God. He said, I was depressed. And get this verse. He says, God who comforts the depressed sent Titus to me. I trusted God, not man. And God sent a man. Ever heard of a cross? So remember, we have a vertical relationship with our invisible Father, and 1 John says that if we say we love him who we can't see, and we can't love the person who we can see, the truth is not in us, because we are made to be in him and in his family. So I want you to look at these skills. Step over the hump, the little speed bump of vulnerability, and for some of you, it's going to feel like Mount Everest, and open up about a weakness, open up about where it hurts. And when you begin to do that, and you do these various skills that the materials take you through, when you begin to do that, and when a church is making spaces for that to happen in small groups and ministries and all of that, you will see incredible growth begin to happen.